Hey everybody, welcome to episode 19 of the Outdoor Adventure Hour. We actually hit record. We actually hit go live on time today, so we didn't have to restart our entire introductions. No,
Yeah,
no,
darn it.
no dig on my co-host over there, but um, it happens from time to time, even to the most seasoned people. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to have a really interesting concept. This is a concept that Rob and I talk about a lot offline about really fitting a gun to a person. But before we get into that, let me get this guy right here, Rob, my co-host, to talk a little bit about himself.
Hey, everybody. I am Rob Lupo from Lupo Outdoors. We are an outdoor channel. If you're brand new to us here, please check us out. We have a lot of things, including fishing, hunting, shooting, competition shooting, archery, kayaking, sailing, camping. Everything outdoor stuff is what we're looking at. Anyhow, I've been working with the Rogue Banshee here for quite a while. And today's episode, I think it's going to be really, really good because it's one of those mystical things is like, how do you properly fit a firearm? And I mean, fitting for the hand, for like a pistol, a handgun is different than it is for a rifle. And that's different than it is for a shotgun. Lots of similarities, but very specifics. And when you go into competition, it changes again.
It's funny how that is, right? Because it's so
Always.
funny when we get talking about fitting a long gun. It's so weird hearing it, that a shotgun's different than a rifle, right? It's like, well, why would the two be different? They're long guns, but
Right.
the purpose of the gun is completely different. And then where you're sighting and all that, it's even though it's a long gun, it's mechanically different. When
Exactly.
it comes up to your body.
Well, also, when you're shooting with a shotgun, you don't walk around like this. You have it in a hold position, and then when you see your target, you move ahead of it and fire. So you're supposed to fire the second it hits your cheek. So you're timing the flight of like the bird or the clay. Whereas rifle shooting, you bring it up, you hold your sight, you take your second, you breathe out, pull the trigger. But when we're talking about fitting, I see this so often, and it kind of drives me crazy. It's like, oh, I love how this feels in my hand. That's awesome. It still might not actually fit you really well. Or the fact that people will just like, oh, I'm buying my first gun, and they'll buy it online or like through Bass Pro Shops and have it sent to them. And they're like, oh, this feels too big or it's too small for my hand. Well, that's
Yeah.
kind of and you can't return it.
Well,
It's
it's funny.
it's crazy.
When I was a gun dealer and I was talking about talking to new shooters, they're buying their first gun, and I say that you can want whatever gun you want, but the gun picks you. You don't pick the gun picks you. And people were always like, I don't understand what you mean by that. I go, just because it's like, hey, I really want a Desert Eagle 50 caliber. We're going to go pistols here. Or a Desert Eagle 50 caliber. Well, have you ever shot a gun before? No. Why do you want a Desert Eagle 50? Because
Because
it's
they look
cool.
cool.
You're going to hate shooting, right? I mean, and then you start looking at someone, they're like, I want a Desert Eagle 50, and they're like 5'1" with like the hands of a 12-year-old, right? It's like
Yeah.
that's not the right gun for you,
Yeah.
right?
A
So let
skinny 12-year-old at that.
yeah. So it's like, so now we need to go, well, what gun works for you? Does it, again, going with pistols, does it fit your hand? Right? Because I had a couple of months ago on my podcast on For the Love of Guns, I had Susan Romanoff on talking about choosing a handgun that fits you. And what's so funny is she proved on that podcast that one of my main go-to everyday carry guns is actually doesn't fit my hand correctly. And it's so weird to think that.
Yeah.
And but going through that, I mean, fitting a pistol's fairly easy. There's only so many things for your hand, right? Talk to me a little bit about let's start with shotgun. Let's say, we're going to go do sporting clays. How would we fit a shotgun for sporting clays?
So there's a couple different stages. You start like you would a rifle. Now, if you go to a place that, a very reputable place that sells, good quality rifles, and they have a clue of what they're doing, they're going to help you with the fitting. Gunsmiths will help you with the fitting. Places that make custom stocks will help you with the fitting. But the poor man's fitting is this. You put the butt of the shotgun or the rifle right here after you put your arm in like a 90-degree angle, your shooting arm, put the butt stock right there in the crimp of the elbow there. And your finger should rest gently on the trigger. So when you grip the handle, that finger should the pad of your first digit, so just gently rest on the trigger. It shouldn't be extended and it shouldn't be really pulled in. It should fit right about there. And now from here to here, right, from the butt to the trigger, that's how you would do a poor man's fitting. Now, it doesn't mean you can't shoot it, but it depends on what you're going to shoot. If you're plinking and you don't care about hitting the target or not, it doesn't really matter. But if your finger is too bent, then you need to extend the butt stock a little bit, right? And if it's too high, you're stretching to hit the top of the trigger or the center of the trigger, then you need to tighten in the butt stock. Now, that works for both shotguns and rifles, unless you're doing competition. And then when you're doing competition, you need a fitter. You need somebody there to watch. So my instructor, we had verified like my shotgun empty, and I would hold it up in the firing position. And what he would do is he'd go straight down, look at me straight down the barrel, right? Be right in front of the gun. And my finger is not on the trigger, right? My finger is like point just for the sake of safety. And because we've already measured where my finger is supposed to be. And now we're worried about cant, right? So it's interesting where sometimes when I'm here, I'm tilting to the left. So he's like, you have a slight cant when I'm looking down to the left. So we put an adhesive pad right where my grip is to force my hand to the right more to get me centered out.
See,
right?
I would have thought that you would have adjusted like towards the stock a little more, not where your hand is.
Yeah. Well, the thing is my wrist was wanting to cant, and this was forcing my hand to the right. And so I get a better grip. And then it's a series of customizing the pad, to the stock. And that either means I have to shave the stock or I have to shave the pad to fit that stock appropriately to get that perfect fit. Now, here's why it's important. If I have a slight cant, it's the same thing with rifles. If people use a bubble level for the same reason. Once it leaves, it can veer off, right? So if you're missing a lot of targets, you may be canting the rifle or you might be canting the shotgun. But my shotgun's a competition shotgun, and that shot. And so the point is I'm not using it for hunting. I'm not just out there playing around. I'm visibly focusing on the competition. So the fitting is vital. If I go to a competition, I don't care if you're a seasoned professional, you've been in competitions. If I give you a shotgun that doesn't fit you right, you're going to miss targets. You're just inevitably going to miss targets, whether or not you know your aim. It has to fit you. Now with rifles, it's the same principle. You want to make sure that you're not canted. You want to make sure that you have a good fit, because if it's too short and you kind of have it out, the recoil is really going to hit you hard. And if it's too far out and you're stretching your fingers, you're not going to have full control over it either. So the fitting absolutely matters. If you're hunting, it could be the difference between hitting that buck and not hitting that buck, at a distance. You can almost hit everything, with a rifle at 25 to 50 yards. About 25 yards, you can hit everything. Once you get to 300, 500, and 800 yards, it makes a difference. You want it to fit appropriately. The first handgun I purchased for myself was a Glock 17 Gen 1. And I discovered right then and there, I'm not a huge fan of the Glock handle because it doesn't fit my hand.
It's not uncommon with Glock. Like, so my first gun was, that I bought for myself was a Glock 17 Gen 2.
Yeah.
And, when I was young, it was, it was fine. I didn't really worry about that. It was a Glock. I bought it because it was a Glock, right?
Yeah.
That was my first competition gun. I could run that gun. I can run just about any Glock. Once you learn how to run a Glock, you run a Glock. But as I started getting older, I started having wrist problems and hand problems. You're in the same industry I'm in. Carpal tunnel's a thing in our industry. And I've been banging away on a computer keyboard since like 1980, which we know there was no ergonomics back then. So I had to get out of Glock. And, that's why I went into SIGs, because of the ergonomics. You conform to a Glock. The Glock doesn't really conform. I don't know anybody that a Glock really fits their hand.
Well, I know guys who have these massive hands. Oh, it fits fine. Well, good for you.
Yeah. And the thing is like, if you get a 9mm Glock, you could, it's not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. But then you get one in 45 or 10mm. It's like holding on to a freaking 4x4.
Yep.
As opposed to holding on to a 2x4. So it's really important to get that fit. I know exactly what you're talking about, because that's why I got out of Glocks, is because they didn't fit my hand. Right? I started getting older and started to realize, hey, I need the gun to work with my body, not me for the gun. The gun needs to work for me.
Yep, exactly. And that's what really makes a difference. So like, now that I'm getting into like long range competition shooting, right? And I got these beautiful rifles, that are, able to shoot, well above 1,000 yards. The fitting, people are like, oh, just get in they get a standard rifle stock, no rising cheek, no adjustability. And they'll shoot it for a while, and like constantly hear people at the range like, I got to get a different stock, blah, 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 blah. Because they don't fit. And it would cost more in many different ways, because trying to find a decent gunsmith that can actually work, work a stock and customize a stock for you for fitting is hard. They can do some things, but there's especially if it's a wood stock, that requires, some skill there.
When I was going through gunsmithing school, I got one of these. Yep. And this is a pull and drop gauge for fitting stocks. That's why I kind of disappeared off camera, because I was looking over going, I've got this thing. I haven't used it in years, but yeah, this is for fitting a stock to someone. And it's something that people just don't. They don't do, right?
No.
Honestly, I got that. It was great. I've used it a couple of times when I was in FFL. I used it a couple of times, especially since I was a non-stocking dealer for an FFL. We would get like one of my shotguns that was close to what they were looking at and try to get and figure out the stock for them. But it's something that people don't talk about, but it's amazing. It's amazing what happens when you have a gun that fits you. And
It's a world of difference. It's like, wow, I'm actually hitting the target. I mean, it's like, what I recommend is go to a place, any gun store. Like if you're going to buy a handgun, go to a gun store. Don't think brand. Don't think brand. Ignore that for right now. What you need to do is
get your hands on guns.
Start putting your hands on the different guns and then figuring out what feels good in that hand where you get a decent grip. And it just, I mean, it's like having a perfect pair of gloves. It fits perfectly in that hand. Once you've established that, start thinking about the caliber and looking at the different types that brand has. So, and don't just stop. Try as many as you can. Let me try this. Let me try that. You're going to find that a lot of them are too tiny or a lot of them are too big. Then when you find those that, oh, I like this. This is comfortable. Allows me to control the firearm is a key aspect of it. If it's too big, it's going to pop out of your hand. If it's too small, you're gonna cramp your hand, and you're going to adjust the aim of it subconsciously.
And that's the whole thing, is if it doesn't fit your hand, your shots are going to, depending on how it doesn't fit your hand, depends on where your shots are going to end up being on paper. Benchies is out there. Hey, Benchies, glad you could join us here. Hey, guys. Yeah, it might be kind of cheap, but 3D printing is a great prototyping for a stock that you can customize. 3D stock is perfect for you, and then give it to a woodworker or gunsmith to remake it. It's it's funny. Benchies. So Benchies is a big 3D printing guy. It never dawned on me what you just had there, because
it's a brilliant idea, Benchies.
Yeah, if you can get a good stock maker, they can totally replicate that stock. There's jigs that you can.
There's duplicating jigs where they can mount it, and then as that moves, it's moving the cutter. Yeah,
it's almost like brilliant. A lathe for stocks. But no, that is one great idea. I never thought about that. I think the only problem with it would be printing it. You might have to print it in 3 or 4 pieces depending on your 3D printer. But that is an amazing idea.
And then the thing is once you've printed it, if it fits pretty well, you don't have to reprint it and modify it there. You could use RASP files on it to adjust it a little bit to its perfect, and then that's it. Just take that to the.
If anything, you're going to print it. You're going to print it a little big,
right? So you can fine tune it.
Yeah, so you can fine tune it down to you. But that's
a great idea, Benchies.
Yeah, I never even thought about that.
Me neither.
But yeah, that's you should see some of the stuff he does. But yeah, it's and that's the thing is, what drives me nuts. So I'm gonna switch over to the AR-15 for a minute. You hear the antis out there going, it's got a collapsible stock, so it's military. The whole idea of the collapsible stock is to change the stock so it fits the shooter. I mean, yes, in the military, they're wearing plate armor and stuff like that, and they're going to shorten that stock up to get around that. But the same thing happens in the civilian market where, if I shoot an AR and then my wife shoots the same AR, that stock's going to be smaller. I mean, on her AR, her stock is smaller, so it fits her. But yeah, it's having things with collapsible stocks does not mean that it's for evil. It's to fit the gun to the shooter.
It makes the firearm safer.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a very good point. Nowadays I want to be able to adjust my firearms. I want to be able to adjust the cheek and the pull. And if the rifle doesn't come that way, like, because I have rifles now, then I have to modify that rifle to make it do that. But there's other ways to do that with one of my rifles. And it's actually my Winchester Wildcat 22, which is actually quickly became my absolute favorite 22 of all times. And I got to review it on my channel, by the way. So what I did is I bought a large leather wrapping. So it's a leather cover, right, for the butt of a rifle, but that butt on that 22 is small, so there was room in there. And then I have a like a rubber riser that I put on top of it, so it brings it up, so my cheek is now perfect to look down the scope on that 22. And then I just, tighten up, because it laces, and I just tighten up the laces and all that nifty stuff. So you can modify your rifles to fit you better. But like I said, when you go into competition, that fit has to be absolutely spot on. So, it's like, so what I do, like the Ruger Precision Rifle and several of my other rifles, like the AMDT chassis, you can loosen them up and adjust them and fit them, right? But what I've discovered is if I want to pull the bolt out, I have to collapse the cheek riser all the way down to be able to pull the bolt out, because it's very close. I have a short buttstock on my MDT. So what I did is I took a silver Sharpie, and once I had everything adjusted exactly where I needed, where the bolt is, right, when I have it tightened, I just put a silver Sharpie ring about that on all of that. So if I have to collapse everything down, I just bring it up into the silver Sharpies there, lock it back, and I'm back where I need to be. But also, if I want to let somebody else use it to shoot it, they can adjust it wherever they want, and I go right back to what I need.
It's amazing you say that. I might steal that, because like this rifle right here, my 308 AR, I have a very specific stock on that, because I can change, the butt pad can go up and down, so I can change my drop. It kind of goes, it collapses in and out for the length of pull. And then, like you were having a problem with cant on yours, I actually took that butt pad and canted it a little bit, which forced the gun to be straight. And yeah, I think I might do that with a Sharpie, so that way, if for some reason one of the screws came loose on that, I could put it right back to where
you need it to be. Yeah, I started doing that a long time ago with not only some of my rifles, but it was before I got into competitions. But my competition, my first couple of shotguns I got for competition were adjustable, and then I realized that if I hit it by accident and it collapsed, then I had to go through the whole process. But I use silver Sharpie because it's permanent. And all I do is I bring it out and then past the line, because the line is on the
right on the edge.
It's on the movable part, but it's also, I circle the plate, so as it's coming out, I pull it out until I can see black, and then I push it back in until it's just touching the silver, and I'm exactly where I need to be.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, that's a hell of an idea. I'm definitely going to steal that from you, because that's that's always my concern with that rifle, is for some reason, I finally got it to where I want it. If something happens to that rifle, I bump it or a screw comes loose, whatever, it's going to be a nightmare to get that stock
exactly where you needed it again. Yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, I recommend that. And like I said, if somebody, messes with it, or, you give it someone to shoot, go ahead and adjust it. Well, I'm good. Just go ahead and adjust it to fit you. Now, let's say that your wife wants to shoot it and you want to shoot it. So use a gold Sharpie for her and a silver Sharpie for you, and you will always have your marks. But I recommend metallic instead of color, because metallic will show up better in low light than a color will.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is like on that tube, all the tubes there are black.
Exactly.
The colors aren't going to show up very well at all. Now,
right.
Let me ask you this. So now that you're getting into long range shooting prone, how does that change fitting a stock?
It doesn't, but it's harder for me because I had neck surgery.
Right.
So the fitting on your rifle is going to be the same whether you're prone, or your bench, or if you're going to be doing like log rest. It's all about where your hand meets the trigger and you have your pull. So you want to make sure that elbow is about a 90-degree bend. So that doesn't change. It doesn't really change. I have found when you're prone, you can kind of hinge into it and get a little bit more comfortable with it. The reason why prone's so effective is the more of your body that's stationary, the better your aim's going to be. Well,
you have such a wide base that's touching the earth.
Yep, and very little of your body is straining to hold up. So you're not using any muscles. Everything's just relaxed. The only thing you're doing is keeping your head up, and then which is why I like to rest my cheek, on the rest there. Rest my cheek and just focus down. So rest cheek, make sure I'm level. I use a go no go. No, I'm sorry, it's not a go no. It's electronic level that you get from MDT, and I found one for like $100 off of Facebook Marketplace, believe it or not, and I got it, and it's literally changed my life to shooting, any rifle shooting, because what I've discovered is if I have a bubble level someplace, I have to physically look at that bubble level, adjust, and then take my focus back to the scope. With the electronic one, it's a light, right? So when it's red or orange, when it's green, I know I'm level. And what I discovered, keeping both eyes open, when I'm level, my peripheral vision places the green light right here, and I never have to take my eye off the target. I can just move and then take my shot. If you don't have one, get one.
You were talking about that in your quest to 1,000 yards. When you were out shooting, you and Mike were talking about cant on the rifle, and you knew you were canted because of that level. Because most things, crap, I can't pick it up. Where the hell is it? It's mounted on that rifle, and I can't pick it up live. Because like that has a bubble level that comes down. But for me, I wouldn't want, my fear is looking at a bubble level is that I'm going to take my eyes off the scope. I'm going to look at that level.
Yep.
And I'm going to go back to the scope and I can't find my target again. Because even just looking out, I might move. Whereas,
you're going to move. That's the thing. You're going to move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what, if you think about it, when we're driving cars, we're coming up to an intersection. Most of the time, we don't see the traffic light. We see the color and we recognize the color, but we're still looking straight forward.
Right.
And that's the thing where I like with that level that you've got is you look for the colors and, it's in your peripheral vision. Whereas a bubble level is I'm going to look.
You have to look. Yeah.
And now, how close to the line am I?
Exactly. Now, here's the kick. The one I have is an older version, so it actually has a bubble level on top of it and then the light bar, right? The new ones don't have the bubble level because they can be at any cant, which is kind of neat. But what I like about that is if my battery dies when I'm
You
out
still
there
got you
shooting,
still got the bubble level.
I can still,
Yeah,
and then I
you
also
got a
have it
lot of
near the
backup.
front off to here, so I can still kind of see with my peripheral, and I don't really have to, focus on it so much. So a lot of people put it up here at the top of the scope. I have it on the most aft end of my Picatinny rail that's closest to me, and on my bubble level coming out here. So if you're a right-handed shooter, you want to come it off to the left. If you're a left-handed shooter, you want it coming off to the right. But having that close, I can still pick up the bubble level with my peripheral vision. I have to kind of focus on the peripheral, but having that light is an absolute game changer. I just wish they weren't like $200.
So let me ask you this. You were talking about cant on your shotgun, and
Yeah.
you worked on your hand. So what would you do to correct that if you're always doing that on a rifle? I mean, I know a couple of shotguns that I used to sell. I think they were Winchesters, that used to have spacers that you would put between the stock and the back of the receiver, and it would either change the
Right.
length, it would change the drop, or it would change. It would kind of bend it in a little bit to you.
So here's an example: the Benelli Lupo rifle, which I absolutely freaking love. It actually has spacers, and the spacers, I can either pull it back or I can take the spacer out and bring it closer. But one of the cool things about that is it actually has spacers to cant it, focus it off to the left, focus it off to the right a little bit. So you can put correctional spacers in there. Not all of them will let you do that, but the Benelli Lupo comes with the proper spaces you need to be able to do the proper canting. It's awesome. That's exactly what you would do. And if you're doing competition shooting and you don't have adjustable like cheek risers and all that stuff, everything's custom made. So when they build the stock for you, they will adjust the stock appropriately for your shooting style.
So
At
that's
great
interesting
cost.
because in a chassis you can't do that because it's the idea of the chassis is to be as rigid as possible. So on a chassis, what would you do if you're canning? Would you do the hand trick again?
So the hand pad would also work for a rifle to a degree.
Okay.
It depends on how you're doing it. Um, the 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 chassis you can buy today are very, very customizable, and you can adjust it. So when you're dealing with something big and heavy like that, the reason why the cant on a shotgun can be corrected with that small pad is you're moving the shotgun. Everything's moving.
Yeah.
I'm taking the target up, or I'm following the target up to the apogee and then I'm firing. You're not doing that with a lot of the competition rifles. That's why that bubble level makes a difference because, you may run over to a barrier, you set it down, you're going to level and you're going to fire, you're going to do your bolt things, fire, bolt, right? And it's all about keeping it level because the further you go, so like when you're really close by, a slight cant, you're still going to hit the target. But the farther you go out, let's say look at the King of 2 Miles. A slight cant is going to send that way the hell out of there. And you're like,
Yep.
I'm not anywhere near the target. I watch some of these things where I see people going to 1,000 yards and they're like, I don't even know where I'm hitting. Well, there's a couple of reasons for that.
It's funny. I saw a video. It was like I think it was like yesterday, where somebody was they were talking about. So we free float barrels for for long range competition, and they were talking about where you put your hand. If you wrap your thumb around the barrel, would that change the impact of the bullet. So they put this rifle into, basically a vise, right?
Yeah.
Fired their first shot, and then they put like I think it was like 5 pounds of pressure on the barrel where you might wrap a thumb, and then you can see the shot went down, just a little bit, but it was enough. Then they put like 10 pounds, the shot went down again. So I mean, we're talking about. I mean, think about it, 10 pounds of pressure is not a lot of pressure,
No.
right, on your hand. Even 5 pounds is not a lot. But when you start talking out there, and I forget the distance they were shooting. I thought it was like 250 or 300 yards. If you can see a drop in a bullet just by putting 5 pounds onto a gun, what would can't do? What would your length of pull being incorrect be? What happens if your head, the cheek risers? What if your cheek rise? We're talking about minor changes that are changing that impact. That you've got a lot of forces on this gun that you don't even think about. It's
Exactly.
like, oh well, this gun's just inaccurate. I mean, you might have an inaccurate gun, but like I like to say is, just about any rifle I shoot is more accurate than me, the shooter. So trying to change that up. I mean, if I go out and shoot, like one of the Winchester 94s, my impacts are way different than shooting an AR.
Yeah.
And my impacts are way different shooting an AR that's got a free float handguard, because a barrel of an AR is not actually free floated. But a free float handguard versus one with, just the old handguards. We have a lot of changes that are happening to these guns that you just don't think about.
Well, I mean, and you have to look at all kinds of things. Is the rifle fitted to you appropriately? Is it bedded? Is the torque of the action screws appropriate? Are they over torqued? Are they under torqued? Is it a free floating barrel? Does the chassis bow? The fitting starts with you and then runs down the whole length of the gun.
Well, and that's the funny thing, because it starts at the butt. The fitting of a gun of a long gun starts at the butt and works all the way forward.
Exactly.
It's funny, people don't think of that because they think, okay, I'm gonna get this barrel as a carbon fiber wrap barrel, blah blah blah. They go through that thing, and it's like, that's awesome, but if the gun does not fit you, you would have been better off spending $400 or $500 on a stock than $1,000 on a barrel.
I'll tell you right now that if you had a $10,000 gun and you had a $500 gun, that $500 gun fit you like a glove. It was perfect, and you guys were using the same ammo and the same length barrel. That $500 gun is going to outshoot the $10,000 gun that doesn't fit you at all.
So crazy. It's
fitting
so funny
means everything.
Yeah. Because at that point, once you get it fitted, then you get the gun fitted, get it sighted in, and then start tweaking the product afterwards. It's so many times I saw people, when I was in FFL, I saw people do stupid things, right? It's like, they would spend all their money on a barrel rifle, a rifle barrel. And then they would go cheap on the stock. They'd go cheap on a receiver. And I'm like, it's dumb.
Yeah.
You took a Corvette engine and put it in a Chevette.
Exactly. Well, see, there's a reason why. So when people look at it, it's like, well, I want to customize my gun and I want to get a different stock for it. And what they focus on is cool looking over proper fitting. There's a reason why MDT stocks become the favorite of a lot of shooters. They are rock solid. So once you are torqued in with the action screws and it's in there appropriately, and you bed it if you need to bed it. It is so customizable for fitting. You're going to get it exactly the way you need it. And that makes a big difference. But the some cheaper stocks don't give you that flexibility, you know.
Yeah.
Like I can't do that with a Magpul as easily. I have adjustable. So like I have a stock on my Ruger position that's from Magpul, and it allows me to adjust the cheek, and it allows me to adjust the length of pull, and can't. And I hate it. I absolutely hate it.
It's fully adjustable and you hate the stock.
I don't like it. It's so hard to adjust it if I need it, which is great because it doesn't come out of adjustment. But uh, it's that's on my Ruger Precision rifle, and I need to fold the stock to pull the bolt out to clean it, and I can't without dropping the cheek riser all the way down. I can't pull the bolt out. It's the same issue I run into. So
Yeah.
honestly, the adjustable stock that comes with the RPR is fantastic. So I was like, I don't want the Magpul one. It works for things like an AR-15. Those are amazing. It works really, really well. But the adjustability it will literally be the difference between success and failure. And people think, well, I'm only going to be out there hunting and blah, blah, blah. There are times you have to take a long shot.
Well, and that's the thing is, I mean, it's different. Competition shooting is different than hunting, right?
Very.
It's like target shooting with your pistol is completely different than defensive shooting, right?
Yep.
When you start talking about something living on the other side of the gun, let's just take out stress and everything, right? You can where you're talking about, fractions of an inch changes the impact of a bullet. You're talking about going from, in hunting, we talk a lot about humane hunting. You don't want the animal to suffer, right?
No.
You want that critical shot. You want the animal to go down. You don't want them to suffer. So by not, I mean, technically by not fitting your gun and doing everything you can to make sure that gun is as accurate as it could be, you're not actually being ethical in hunting.
Exactly. Yeah,
So funny
you're
to
right.
think about.
No,
But yeah,
you're right.
it's so funny. I've never, and don't get me wrong, I understand the coolness factor, right? Everybody wants a cool gun, but for me, I don't know. Maybe it's just I'm a practical shooter, right? I have a reason for that gun. It's got to match that reason. For me, I'm looking at function more than what it looks like. I don't care
Yeah.
what it looks like. Like, people talk. They're like, I used to worry about the finish of a gun, right? And then like on pistols, Kydex is harder on the finish of a gun than leather is for a holster, right?
Mm-hmm.
I stopped caring about the finish of the gun, and people are like, "Well, don't you worry about the finish? I always get it refinished. I don't care. All right, I need this. I need a certain function to happen. So when people start looking at their firearm as a tool, complete different game. Like, I have a hammer. I used to work construction with my uncles when I was a kid. Right, my uncle bought me an East Wing hammer. Still have that hammer today. It's that that hammer is like 40, almost 40 years old. And does it look like a nice new hammer? No, because it's been used. It's a tool.
Yep.
It's being used. It hasn't been abused, but it's been used. So guns, we use our tools. They're going to just get over, right? I mean, we don't want to go out and just start throwing them around, but yeah, we want that function. We want to make sure that they're doing their job, and then fitting that gun is part of doing that job, right? I mean, I'm not going to take a 32-ounce hammer to a tack nail. could also could, it could also put a hole through a wall too at the same time.
Exactly.
So
You
what
know who
else?
hasn't shown up is Vanessa Kitty. She's always here. What's
Yeah, we
going on?
haven't seen Vanessa Kitty. I know she did an Instagram post the other day, so she's around somewhere.
Yeah.
So what else about fitting should someone look at? I mean, so you kind of talked a little bit about your fitting. How do you know if someone helping you fit a gun actually knows what the hell they're doing?
So that's a really, really good question because honestly, I've seen employees at gun shops try to help people like fit the rifle, and it's evident that they're clueless. They just want to make the sale. If you really, really want to make sure that you can get a proper fitting, I would say talk to a local gunsmith and ask them, do you do rifle fittings, or shotgun fittings, or can you help, customize my grip for fitting for my handgun, and make these guys, I mean, also make sure that they're actually real gunsmiths, because there are some fake gunsmiths out there right now.
Yes. And it's funny because you think about that with handguns. People don't think about fitting a grip for a handgun. It happens all the time. And going back to Glock, Glock after the Gen 3s, they started coming out with these little, or at Gen 3s, they started coming out with these finger grooves. And the first thing people were doing were taking the finger grooves right off because it started spreading your fingers out.
Yep.
And the gun didn't fit your hand anymore. So people were taking them in, people who were doing stippling on guns, they were taking them and just taking those things right off. I know on the P320, oh God, what's his name? He shoots for SIG. Anyways, he was modifying the grip modules of the P320 for all of the SIG shooters before SIG decided to cut their shooting team down, where he was cutting that. I was going to say beaver tail. It's kind of a beaver tail, but he was modifying those grip modules to get as high up onto that grip module as possible. He was doing it with a Dremel, and you could see he showed a couple of pictures of ones he went a little too deep, and he went right through, ruined the grip module. But fortunately, it's just the cheap plastic part of it. But he was fitting the guns to the hands of the shooters to make it more efficient. It's so weird to think about. We might need to fit a handgun.
Yeah.
But yeah, you do, especially now that we have plastic, frames and stuff like that. There are more. You can modify a handgun a lot easier now, but make sure you do go to someone who knows what they're doing, because like a Glock, if you screwed a Glock up, that's the gun.
It.
That's the actual licensed.
Yep, that's it.
You're
done.
Part of it. You're done. Yeah, you're done. You need a new frame now.
Yeah.
So yeah, make sure you find someone who knows what they're doing.
Yeah,
not somebody goes, hey, I watched the YouTube video on this.
Like with my shotgun work, so I can tell usually within the first lesson. Like I'll get somebody like, hey, I can help you improve your shooting. Okay, great. And then I'll sit there and I'll take a lesson from them, right? And like, all right, see what you can do. And I'll tell within a matter of minutes whether or not they're full of crap or not.
Yeah.
And often what I'll do is I'll go to a new shotgun field, where they're doing sporting clays, skeet, or trap. And I'll find the person who's like winning the competitions all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, can you give me some lessons? So when I first started out, a lot of the top shooters teach. There's a husband and wife shotgun shooters up in Usla Gun Club out here near Orlando, and they're fantastic. I have over at Blackjack Sporting Clays, the pro there. Great lessons. I actually learned more from him and my first 3 lessons that I did from a year with my previous instructor. You know,
That's amazing.
and what people don't understand is people are like, "Oh, I've taken lessons, I'm good." I'm like, no, you're not, because you as a human will develop bad habits and your fitting will modify and change. You gain weight, your fitting's changed. You lose
Yep.
weight, your fitting's changed. You have an injury, your fitting's changed. So even though I compete, I constantly take lessons because I can't judge how I'm doing because I'm not looking at myself. People are like, I can set up
Yeah.
cameras. Then you're doing it after the fact and you can't modify your behavior or change. It's my instructor sits there and he watches both how I'm doing my stance, and he's also watching how I'm hitting the clays, right? So he can tell me if I'm hitting the front part of the clay, if I'm obliterating the clay, or if I'm just sending enough of the pellets to hit the clay. So it all goes back to the fitting. So he'll sit there and say, did anything change, since the last time you shot? Well, I haven't shot for a while because I shattered my right arm. And he goes, we got to start your fitting over from scratch.
Yeah, because everything's changed. I mean, you literally at
Everything's
that
changed.
point, the length of your arm could have changed.
Oh, it did. That's the
Yeah.
thing. I mean, I shattered my right hand or my right arm here. Hey, Mike just called me and I didn't answer. And Mike knows that if he calls, I always answer. How you doing, Long Range Reaper? That's our buddy Mike. Fantastic guy. Absolutely love this guy to pieces.
No. Don't get him a big head. We were totally talking crap about you, Mike, earlier.
Yeah,
So
right.
you gotta up your game.
Yeah.
But no,
Yeah.
and that's funny because injuries will change things. Because like for me, when I got my back injury, I actually lost an inch. I
Mm-hmm.
actually lost an inch. I used to be 6'3". I'm 6'2". And it's so weird to think about that
I'm still
now.
5'10".
Well, it was so weird is even with age. I mean, gravity is pulling us down. We actually, we actually shrink as we get older. But I think we shrink and then get bigger in the middle at the same time. But yeah, those are things. Injuries are huge. Like for me, I've had my shoulder rewired twice. Um, and they reset my shoulder to be very tight to keep me from dislocating because it used to be so bad I could just grab my wrist, tighten up my deltoid, and you can watch my whole shoulder just come right out of a socket. But then they rewired my shoulder. They rewired my shoulder, and then that changed. I get a lot of crap. Yeah, we probably can't afford to. I get a lot of crap at some of my videos when I'm shooting ARs because I chicken wing, right?
Yeah.
And I have to because of how my shoulder is set. That's basically how I can get on, get behind that rifle. And as much as I try to do it, to get that arm down, it just happens. So I've had to readjust ARs based on that injury.
Yeah. So that is a real key factor that people don't take in consideration is the moment any modification, like first of all, when I go in and talk about fitting and I'm fitting myself to my shotgun, I do this biannually. So twice a year, I will reestablish my fitting to the rifle. It's like you get your eyes checked, once a year for a reason, right? Especially when you're getting older. But because your body changes and your strength changes and your flexibility changes, your fitting on your handguns, your shotguns, and your rifles are going to modify. So if you're a competition shooter or if you really want to just be really on your game, adjust your fitting if you need to about twice a year. Every 6 months, I'll sit there and go, I'll look at this and I said, this rifle has been shooting perfect. And now I'm off a little bit, and I'm using the same reloads and the same bullets and the same powder and everything, and I'm not modifying anything. What's going on? Let's go back to the basics. How's my fitting? How am I fitted to my rifle? And that is a big difference.
It's funny. I never think about that. I have never thought about refitting a gun, because you always think, okay, yeah, I know to fit a gun, right? I know that. But then I fit it, and I never think about reestablishing, does that fit? I mean, like I said before, I switched competition guns because my hands are getting weaker. The whole thing is my hands are only going to get weaker. They're not going to, I'm doing things to slow that down. But if I pick up my X5 and go shooting with it, my hands might not perform with the way they were when I picked that up. That might not be my gun going on in the future.
Yep.
Just because it doesn't fit.
It's very, very true. It's very true. And you really kind of just have to establish yourself and understand that everybody's like, well, I have a ritual, and when I start to shoot, hi Vanessa Kitty, we missed you. But so everybody goes, well, like I have my ritual before I shoot, and I have my breathing exercise, blah blah blah, and they're like, I just really can't crack this. I'm not hitting like I should be hitting, and I'll ask them. I said, when's the last time you fitted yourself to the gun? Oh, I did that when I first got it. How long has that been? Oh, it's been about 3 or 4 years. I said, you're a different person now.
Yeah.
Refit yourself to your rifle, or refit yourself to your handgun or your shotgun, especially shotguns, because you're constantly moving with a shotgun. I said, go through another fitting process. Now, come back and try again. Consistency with everything. Like I've talked in the past, the fact that when I'm shooting shotgun, every shot I make, because I reload, and if I have to use factories, everything's at 1,200 feet per second, and I know what my load bounces are, right? Consistencies, everything is down to the point. But my professional shotgun that I use for competitions, yeah, and like Vanessa Kitty says, every injury is going to modify your fitting as well. But I have refitted that shotgun to me dozens of times. And what I'll do is I'll do a last minute, like the night before a competition, if I'm going to think, I'll re-establish and verify that I don't have to make any changes to my fitting. Because if it doesn't fit, and it's not 100% comfortable and 100% solid to you, your firearm is an extension of your body. And if it's not perfect, you're not going to hit, at least not consistently.
So we got like a minute and a half left. What's going on over at Lupo Outdoors?
So lots of shorts. I have a riddle of a day that goes up in shorts every day at 4 o'clock. And it's an outdoor riddle. It has to do with everything outdoors: fishing, hunting, shooting, sailing, kayaking, camping, and survival. So check that out. That's kind of fun. I have a new review coming out this weekend. I'm going to try to have it out on Saturday. And then I have another long form video coming out on Sunday. But check out the review. I'm actually going to be reviewing something that Mike turned me on to. And it's across the shoulder, like a carry bag, right? It's like a bag that you carry with you. Huh?
Like a sling bag?
Yeah, it's like a sling bag, but it's also for your concealed carry. And after he showed it to me, I carry it with me. I went and bought one. There will be a link to it on Amazon. They're very inexpensive. I mean, like $20 and less. And it is my absolute favorite thing. I can carry my wallet, my keys. I mean, I can carry everything in it. And
It's so practical. He carries his lipstick in it.
I don't have lipstick. I have lip gloss.
So, well, with the last few seconds here, I'll tell you guys, I dropped a video today. It's on it's actually a green dot, not a red dot, from Gideon Optics. I put that on one of my P320s and took it out and shot it. And so that dropped a few hours ago. So go check that out. And then I've got the regular weekly podcast coming out on Sunday at noon Mountain Time. So go check that out. And with that, we are out of time. Thanks everybody for joining us. We really appreciate you guys hanging out with us because we have fun doing this, and it's a lot of fun when you guys jump in too. Everybody have a safe weekend.
Thank you guys. We'll see you soon. Oh, hey, what's next week?
Next week, it's funny. I had the idea and then I forgot what it was. Cleaning guns.
Okay.
Cleaning guns.
We're going to talk about that's actually a really good subject matter because people are like, I just clean my gun. I'm like, you could be destroying the action in your bolt action. Yeah.
You could be destroying your barrel.
Yeah. Literally.
So, yes. So next week, we're going to talk about gun cleaning. Gotcha. Everybody have a great weekend.
We'll see you.